Welcome back to Hunting the Haunted here on the Paranormal Network, where we dissect and discuss famous, infamous, and not so well-known cases of hauntings, demonic possession, and UFO and Bigfoot sightings. I'm your co-host, Jason Hewlett.
And I'm Peter Renn. On today's episode, we're investigating the recent bizarre case known as the Watcher House.
Bizarre indeed, Peter, because the Watcher House case has been classified as a real-life horror story, even a haunted house story, although there's been no indication of paranormal activity at all. Thank you all for watching Hunting the Haunted, and I ask that if you enjoy our shows, please subscribe to our channel right now, like this video, and click on the bell, notified each time a new video goes up. Now back to the show. What, from your vast experience, constitutes a legitimate haunting, and following that, actual paranormal activity?
I think the term haunting is very much, it's overused in regard to what it should be. I mean, like you visualize the haunting. A haunting, I visualize like a Peter Sellers movie, that kind of thing, like, Amityville, House of Horror and stuff like that. And it's a well overused term used in our field these days of a location that's supposed to be active, but usually it's more of a dramatized term of a place that has very minimal activity whatsoever.
As we've experienced in many of the allegedly haunted places we've investigated.
Pretty much, yeah. A bit of an anticlimax.
Yeah, most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, according to an article in New York Magazine, Maria and Derek Broaddus purchased the home at 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey for $1.3 million back in 2014. One night in June, after finishing some painting, Derek went outside to check on the mail. The family had been in the home just 3 days, and there wasn't much of it. But that night, Derek found a white envelope addressed to the new owner in clunky handwriting. The typed letter began innocently enough. "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood." But as he kept reading the letter, things took a darker turn. Quote, "How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within?" Now, Peter, as a skeptical paranormal investigator, what would be going through your mind right about now?
I'd probably think that some lunatics left a letter on my doorstep, and I'd probably be inclined to lock all the doors up and know there's some kind of psychopath. I wouldn't automatically think that would be paranormal.
Yeah, it's different, but the letter does go on. Quote, "657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now. And as it approached its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It's now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out." Wow. The letter went on to identify the type of minivan the family drives, the fact contractors had begun renovating the home, and the couple's 3 children, aged 5, 8, and 10. The writer even asked if the Broadduses had more children on the way. Quote, "Do you need to fill the house with the young blood?" I requested. "Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was it greed to bring me your children? Once I know their names, I will call to them and draw them to me." Now, not discounting the fact this letter could be the product of a crazy person, there have been hauntings where the family involved has felt drawn to the home. Am I right, Peter?
Yeah, there's been a number of alleged hauntings over the years where people, been driving past houses, they've been attracted to houses, and much like me as well, like in regard to a lot of houses I've lived before, not so much on the paranormal side, but people, they get attracted to a house because of the characteristics and stuff like that. And I think a lot of times in relation to that, people see, on a skeptical side, people see a kind of, like a window of a potential new home for them, rather than it being a spirit drawing them towards that home.
Yeah, I know there's even a case that we wrote about in your first book where the family felt almost pulled to this home in Harrison. You know what I mean? It just seemed serendipity or something where they just felt
it's a common thing with a lot of movies as well. And it's just like, someone's driving past the house and they get that kind of invisible track to them where they're drawn to this house and it's a rundown piece of crap. And, they see it as a potential home for their family and stuff like that. And other people, wouldn't even give it a second glance. It just seems to be the nature of a lot of movies now. And, it happens in real life as well because people are attracted to houses. It's not really a paranormal thing, but you look at a house, you look at the architecture and stuff like that, and it's like, you could see potential in a house. Well, I do anyway. And you kind of go from there.
All right. Well, this letter concluded saying the author could be any one of the hundreds of people who drive or walk by 657 Boulevard on any given day. They suggested the letters will continue, and there is the signature identifying whoever was behind the letters as the Watcher. Derek did the right thing and notified the police, who inquired if he had any enemies. Then Derek returned to the family's current home, as the Broadduses hadn't moved in yet, and emailed the couple who sold them the home to ask if they had any idea who the Watcher could be and why such a letter would be written. Andrea Woods, the wife of the previous owner, replied the next morning, saying they too had received a letter from the Watcher, which contained a similar description of the Watcher's family observing the home, and had thrown it away without giving it much thought. She said she and her husband had lived at 657 Boulevard for 23 years and never received anything like it. Well, what sort of alarm bells are going off in your head now, Peter?
It's basically the same thing as well. Like there's some psychopath that has a keen interest in the house, and obviously over the course of the 23 years since since Andrea Woods and her husband moved out of the place and the new people moved in, there is some interest in the house.
Yeah, and would you, if you had received a letter like that and were selling the house, would you tell the people who were going to buy it, like, hey, I got this weird ass letter?
No, I wouldn't disclaim that. I don't think that there is any legal bond in relation to disclosing things like that. I mean, you don't have to disclose whether a place is haunted because it's not a scientific proven thing. So it's, you won't get any legal repercussions if you don't disclose things like that.
Well, the Broadduses actually ended up suing the Woods when they learned the family had received a Watcher letter.
Obviously in America. No, I'm kidding.
The Woods countersued, but a judge ended up dismissing the initial lawsuit. The drama didn't end there, though. 2 weeks later, Maria stopped by the house to look at paint samples and check the mail. Sure enough, there was another letter, and she called the police. This letter welcomed the family back to the home, suggested the Watcher knew what belongings had been moved in, and asked if the family had found what was in the walls. The Watcher also referred to the couple as Mr. and Mrs. Broaddus. The letter continued, quote, 657 Boulevard is anxious for you to move in. It has been years and years since the young blood ruled the hallways of the house. Have you found all the secrets it holds yet? Will the young blood play in the basement? Or are they too afraid to go down there alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It is far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. The letter continues in a threatening manner, saying the Watcher can watch the family through any door or window. He claimed the Broaddus family, his obsession, and claimed greed had brought every family to the home, including the Woods, and that the Woods sold the house when the Watcher told them to. Quote, greed is what brought the past 3 families to 657 Boulevard, and now it has brought you to me. Suffice to say, Derek and Maria stopped bringing the kids to the house, and they began second-guessing moving in. Several weeks later, a third letter arrived. Quote, where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you. So I think you're very right in your assumption that someone crazy has sort of fixated not only on this house, but whoever seems to live there, right, Peter?
Pretty much. I mean, at that point, yeah, you've got family safety in mind. You would move them out of the place and, just, until you investigate a little bit more. If that was me, I would I'd take a thorough look around my house to see whether there's, not to see whether there's any dead bodies or anything like that, but to see whether there's any cameras or anything hidden behind the walls or anything like that could be, that could have been installed by another source.
Yeah, and I think I definitely would not be moving my family in there or like have my children around there at all, because to me, there suggests within, I did 10 years as a crime reporter, there suggests a threat of violence.
Pretty much. And then also at the same time as well, I'd be very curious. I'd be inclined to, maybe leave some kind of trap out or invite this person into my home and set up cameras myself to see who it is. I'd be basically, if it was my dream home, I'd pursue it in a way that I'd want to find out who this person was.
Me too. Well, the family attempted to size up neighbors and even recruited a private investigator and a retired FBI agent to help solve the case and reveal the Watcher's identity. The closest they came to an identity was a profile that suggested the writer was a voracious reader and displayed an anger towards the wealthy in particular. There were typos and errors in the letters to support the anger theory, but none of the investigators involved believed the Watcher was likely to act on the threats made. In the end, the Broaddus family didn't move into 657 Boulevard. The investigation stalled as the Watcher left no fingerprints or digital trail to follow. The family ended up selling the home as the Watcher continued to write letters that became more and more unhinged. The house sold to Allison and Andre Carr in 2019 at a $400,000 loss. So I think we pretty much ruled out paranormal activity here, Peter.
Pretty much, and it looks like it was Allison and Andre Carr that were actually writing the letters, because they got a house for $100,000 less than what it should be.
Right. We're not saying they did. We're not saying they did, but
no, it's blatantly obvious there. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There's no paranormal aspects to this whatsoever. They're obviously dealing with someone with mental issues, whether it's the second generation or the first generation, with the 23-year gap between both those encounters. But I'd be more inclined to source this person out and find out exactly who it is, rather than sell my house for that. If it's a house of a particular, if it attracted me, I'd fight to my very last breath to keep that house and to weed out who that person was. I understand family, and you have a certain element of family security, but at the same time, I would certainly give in to, letters and stuff like that. I'll just carry on.
Well, I have a few final thoughts of my own. There's a Netflix movie coming out about the story, starring Naomi Watts. Reports had surfaced also from other Westfield residents receiving anonymous letters that read in a similar style as the Watchers. In the end, Derek Broaddus admitted to writing the letters, saying he had become obsessed with the Watcher as much as the Watcher had been obsessed with 657 Boulevard. So there you go. Maybe it was almost like an Amityville sort of situation.
Made it up. Come on.
Right?
Jesus. He was obsessed with the Watcher. Yeah, no, it was. Why would you be that obsessed with the Watcher that you would pursue the same route as the person, allegedly the person who terrorized your house and potentially your family? I think we found who the culprit was. I think he just made it all up
in a hope for some publicity and maybe being able to sell the house.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Jason, if you ever got to the point where someone was, if there was a threat against you and your family, like your very own family, would you ever pursue the same avenues to what the person did to you?
No.
Like, it's not mentally stable. It's not mentally correct or morally correct either. So, I think that the person in this equation was Mr. Derek, and he potentially looks like he made it all up for whatever reason. Well, obviously, now he's got a movie out of it.
Well, right, and I'm sure the money made off of that movie deal compensated for any loss in selling the house.
Yeah, it started off as a good story, but unfortunately, it fell to bits at the end, and I think he just shot himself in the foot.
I agree. Well, that's it for this episode of Hunting the Haunted. We'll be back next month with an all-new investigation. Until then, I'm Jason Hewlett.
And I'm Peter Renn. Stay spooky.